Hi, I'm Lisa. In 2024, I have made it a goal to bring to my clients, my friends, and anyone who is interested in learning all the things that one should know as a first-time homebuyer. This also applies to those of you who are thinking about real estate investing, but just don't know where to start. I've tried to think about all the steps in the process, the questions that I get day in and day out, and I hope to bring to you in short videos all the steps in the process, along with some frequently asked questions that I get. So here we go. Where do you start? Normally the answer to that question is get pre-qualified, and that's true. You should always get your pre-qualification before you start looking at houses so that you know if you are approved and for how much. I think though that we should even back up from there. How much house can you afford? Are you ready to buy a home? Let's start by putting together a plan. Take a look at your budget. How much are you paying for your housing costs now? Are you wanting to spend about that same amount, or are you willing to spend a little more for something that would be yours and can build equity? I have a budget worksheet that I share with my clients who need help figuring out this question, and I've put that form at the bottom of the page for you to download. You can take a look at the income that you receive now and what you're spending on your household expenses, liabilities, and savings currently. And then in the second column, you can estimate those differences, discuss together with the family where and how you might economize to make this goal a reality. Let me know if you have any questions about the form or need help talking through what your options might be. Here are some recommendations. Don't be house poor. Think long term. And if you're currently in medical school and your income in the next couple of years is going to double, then plan for the top of that pre-approval range. That might be a good idea at that point. But however, most of us aren't expecting this giant raise anytime soon, so be realistic. Don't forget that you need money in the savings and discretionary columns, spending money. You should include those as well. Do you have money for upfront costs, down payment, and closing costs? The next step is to take a look at your savings. What do you have in the bank? When you're buying a house, you'll have a need for cash out of pocket, and how much can depend on many things, which we'll go into later. Yes, I know there are down payment assistance programs, and there are loan types with zero down payment options as well. And we also have certain strategies that we'll get into later in this series. Those can limit or eliminate most of the cash out of pocket, but there's almost always going to be some type of requirement, and you should be prepared as best you can. We'll talk about the specifics later in the series and discuss individual loan programs, scenarios, and strategies, but for now, let's take a look at the conventional loan process. Here's what you need to know about the 4 categories of cash requirements. Earnest money. Earnest money, or that earnest deposit, is an upfront cost, but it deserves its own distinctive category. Most houses require a good faith deposit on the real estate contract. This money tells the seller that you are serious about buying the home. This money is due when you go into contract on the home, so it's required up front. The amount varies and can be anywhere from $500 to $5,000 or nothing. Most of the time, that amount is based on the home price, but we can discuss this more later in the series. Down payment. This category is often confused with the earnest money or earnest deposit, but the down payment is not a deposit that's required up front to the seller. Rather, this money pays down the principal of the loan that you are applying for and will be collected at closing when you, as part of your cash to close. Down payment amounts vary based on a couple of factors. The requirements of the loan can be anywhere from 0 to 25% of the purchase price, though most government loans require only 0 to 5%. Many times, even if the requirement is lower, I'll still recommend 20% if my client has the funds. This helps them to avoid paying a monthly mortgage insurance, which will keep the monthly payment lower. It also has them paying on a smaller principal amount, which means less interest paid over time since the balance is smaller. Figuring how much down is an extremely individualized procedure. It's about requirements of the loan program itself and also about doing the math to see whether it's more beneficial for you doing it one way versus another and taking your goals into consideration. More on this later, but just remember that strategy is what I'm here for. And where I excel, I'll be the expert in your corner to give you the options that help you choose the best loan scenario for you and your family. So, as you are working through your budget, I would figure 5% of the purchase price as a good rule of thumb. Unless you are self-employed, looking for an investment property, or you're an atypical buyer in some other way, you can always reach out and I can help you to budget a better scenario for yourself, if that's the case. Just give me a call, 918-316-7237. Now let's talk about some of those upfront costs that you see after you're in contract. Again, this is individualized to each transaction, but it is something that you should prepare for. With very few exceptions, every loan will require an appraisal. You should expect between $500 and $800 depending on the property and other factors. You may or may not be required to have a home inspection, but I would recommend that everyone get one, unless you're willing to gamble on such a large investment. These usually average between $250 to $500 depending on the company that you use and the property that's being inspected. Pest inspections are also encouraged, even if not always required. These range from $85 to $250. So again, unless you're a gambler, it's just a good idea to budget for this. There are other inspections that could be required. These are going to be more specific to the property itself, and when we talk about inspections, we'll get into these more later in the series. But for our budgeting purposes, I would figure at least $500 to get you started in this category. Finally, we get to the fourth and final category of home buying expenses, and that's closing costs. We'll delve into this topic much deeper as its own topic later, but for now know that closing costs are not due until the day of closing. These include the cost of the loan, all third-party costs, your prepaids and taxes, and a good rule of thumb for budgeting purposes in this category is 2 to 5% of the purchase price. Now, my purpose of reviewing this information isn't to scare you. There are so many numerous ways to reduce or even eliminate some of the cash out of pocket. But in order to prepare you for what lies ahead as you are in this planning phase, it's best to know that in all likelihood, you're going to need at least some of this money, and you need to know where it's coming from. We'll get into that more too as we talk about down payment assistance programs, what can be negotiated into a contract, gifts from family, and other ways to source these funds. There are so many ways to make the magic happen. Our key points, though, are make a budget. Know what your costs could be and where the money is coming from, and then ask me and my team for help. That's what we're here for. Next week, we'll talk about the next step, which is getting pre-qualified. Usually these two steps can be done together, as I can help you figure out how much money you really need to prepare based on the other information and aspects of your personal situation and goals. But if your goal is to become a homeowner this year, use this week to really nail down the budget. See what you can afford. See what money you have available now. Next week, we can talk about what to do with that information, how to get pre-qualified, and then how to set up this timeline so that in the coming weeks, we can bridge the gap from here to homeowner. If you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be back each week with the next step to the loan process so that you can be prepared. Feel free to contact myself or the team with any questions. Thanks for watching.